All right. So basically, when you have the economic problem, जिसमें you have scarcity, people having unlimited wants, and then you have the limited resources. To solve this, we say that every economy has to answer some questions. What were those questions? As we discussed earlier, the questions were what to produce, how to produce, and for whom to produce, right? And what to produce may we said consumer good, capital good, merit, demerit, public goods, quite a lot of them. How to produce के अंदर we were talking about, do we go for capital intensive methods, should we go for labor intensive methods, do we want a lot of output or do we want relatively less output, do you want a standard product, do you want a customized product, depend करता है. For whom to produce was consumer के लिए, business के लिए, for the government or for the foreigners. So when you're answering these questions, you typically have four economic systems. The first one, which we call a traditional, is actually the barter system. We know that we don't have barter system anymore because barter had a lot of issues. Issues like double coincidence of wants, exchanging good for another good, thana, that was barter. Exchanging a good for another good, and we said there are a lot of problems with it, and it cannot last in a proper big economies. So then we come to the idea of command economic system. Command, which in our case was a lot like that Soviet Union sort of situation, or North Korea in current day. So whenever you have to define what is a command economy, you're going to say some things like that a command economy has only public sector. It has only public sector, matlab 100% public sector. We say all factors of productions are owned and controlled by the government or the state. They own it, they control it. How do they decide what to produce and what not to produce? Well, government decides it. Government decides what to produce and how to produce. Usually, उनका जो ऑब्जेक्टिव होता है, द एम इज सोशल वेलफेयर फॉर द पीपल, फॉर द कलेक्टिव ऑब्जेक्टिव मतलब कि मेजॉरिटी लोगों को देख के काम करना है, मेजॉरिटी लोगों को देख के गुड्स बनाने हैं. एज वी सॉ इन दैट, it was all brown shoes, right? They were all brown shoes and nothing fancy because they wanted to make sure that everyone can get shoes. Okay, if it was free market, businesses would not least have bothered with the idea that everyone should have it. They would have cared कि ये limited leather है, should we make fancy bags with it, should we make fancy shoes with it, who can pay for it, who cannot pay for it. The discussion would have been completely different. Over here we're saying everyone should have a house, everyone should have at least a small house if we can't make a big house, everyone should get food, toilet papers, naukri. Everything is being decided by the government. People do not have much liberty. Okay? Then what you have is a market economy, which is a completely opposite of this. And it only has private sector and nothing else. जो factors of production है, FOPs हैं, they are owned and controlled by people and firms, businesses. It's owned by them. How do they make decision? They use price mechanism. Price mechanism का मतलब हो गया that they rely on the forces of demand and supply. According to Adam Smith, इसको हम फादर ऑफ इकोनॉमिक्स कहते हैं, he speaks something about the invisible hand, कि इकोनॉमी में खुद ब खुद ही सब चीज़ें हो जाती हैं बेसिकली डिमांड और सप्लाई की बेसिस पे. एंड फाइनली द एम for them is all profit maximization. Purely profit maximization की basis के ऊपर काम होता है. ठीक है? So far we're saying mixed economy has both public and private sector. It's a combination percentage wise. Public sector is owned by social welfare. So this is what the public sector of the mixed economy is. And at the same time, you have the private sector in work. Private sector is owned by individuals and firms, and their decisions is made by the price mechanism, demand and supply. That's our next part. And their intentions is all about profit maximizing. So if you have an essay question explain करने का या define करने का, so you have to pick these comparisons. Okay, if you pick this and this you get 2 marks, this and this you get another 2 marks, your 4 marks are done. You can choose these ones also of the objectives. So we'll see how that one goes. So this is a good spectrum which is kind of like telling us how the economic systems were in the 1980s and how they were in 2000. 20 साल के अंदर how the progression happened. On the left hand side we have a totally planned economy, this point right here, which is showing us 100% public sector. That means 0% private. On the extreme right hand side, we have totally free market economy, which is 100% private and 0% public. And if you see right on the spectrum, there is no country on the extreme side. None of them, because there is no example of them. Okay, but if you see North Korea is very close. 1980s के अंदर North Korea was very close to being 100, almost I would say 98 97%. But in the 20 years, so we can see how North Korea में हल्का सा there's an increase. It's a movement towards the right, मतलब towards the free market. That means in North Korea, there has been some increase in the private ownerships. It's probably just the supreme leaders and his close people, personnel's asset transfer or something. Cuba in South America, quite a big transition they have gone through, but still they're on the left hand side. This left hand side is probably like 75% public and a 25% private ownership of resources, whereas over here you would have like 75% private ownership and like 25% public. That's what the right hand side. So if you look at China, big transition that has happened towards free market, and it's moving more. Poland has almost come down to 50-50 range. France, UK, USA, all these democratic countries that we've talked about, they are all on the right hand side, meaning there is more percentage of private ownership, and even getting greater in the last 20 from this 80 to 2000. There's a more movement. Hong Kong ke andar bhi there was a more movement. 2008, this is what the examiner told me in one of our meetings, that in 2008, when there was a big credit crunch meaning when there was a big global economic problem that came in 2008, that was a big crisis. the world faced. तो उसके बाद they realized that if you give too much power to the free market and people, they will exploit. And when they exploit, they will end up doing certain things which is harmful for the masses. And so uske baad they say, the examiner in his book also he mentions that after 2008 थोड़ी सी हमारे यूएस और इसके अंदर गवर्नमेंट इन्वॉल्वमेंट became a little more relatively as compared to the previous years.